Hello, this is Chris Nelson. Today is the 28th of March, 2014, and I will be reading the article, The Pleasure Trap. The subheadings are The Pleasure Trap, Obsession with Feel-Good Senses, Survival and Ignoring Truth, Good, Right, Self-indulgence, Aesthetics and Reality Manipulation, a few quotes. So those are the 6 subsections. Many people focus mostly on enjoyment. Everyone wants to enjoy life, to engage in pleasure fulfillment of various kinds. All people are distracted by the pleasure trap. In the New Age movement, there is the pleasure trap of feel-good comfort that is desired as an inner state to be attained and sought after. This leads to believing in the need to follow your feelings at all times, trust only your feelings, etc. There is also the pleasure trap and obsession with emotions and avoidance of the negatives through outright denial of truth that isn't what people want to hear. They use many dismissive tactics to avoid facing the truth. The pleasure trap is seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. This drive is rooted in the R complex or base brain. This is basing your decisions in life on pleasurable feelings and avoiding pain, especially psychological pain, through ignorance, denial, or rejection of truth. Not many people feel responsible for wrongdoings being engaged by themselves or others in the world, so long as they get their pleasure fulfillment in some way. That sensory perception of feeling good is used as a compass to determine what is allegedly good. We engage in frivolous use of our time and attention without a clue to the ignorance we are immersed in. We don't hold truth, right, and good above our desire to fulfill pleasure and enjoyment. We live in the low base consciousness of the base brain instead of making decisions and spending time, attention, and energy from the higher order thought functionality of the neocortex. This is basing decisions from the base brain low consciousness of choosing the pleasure trap in our lives, ways of being, actions, and behavior. The lower base consciousness is avoidance of putting the time, energy, and effort into more productive and less immediately gratifying behaviors. Low base consciousness has us seeking pleasurable or easy living, comfort, and feeling good through distractions of entertainment and activities that provide us with enjoyment, and these are usually immediate sensory gratification actions, activities, or events from mental, sensational stimulus to effective internal sensations in our bodies. Low base consciousness is about caring more for the senses, feeling good, comfort, gratification, enjoyment, and pleasures we receive than what is actually right, good, and true for our well-being and the well-being of others. It's true you may not be doing harm by seeking enjoyment over that of seeking an understanding of truth in the immediate present, but a lack of truth being understood, aligned with, and embodied results inevitably into manifestation of more wrong, falsity, and bad. People aren't doing direct harm by watching golf, hockey, other sports, or other television distractions, but their time and attention is directed towards useless, frivolous distractions that will not improve their lives or the lives of others, and only serve to remove time in their daily lives and fill time gaps through paying attention to things that don't matter. Imagine all the time and energy wasted on distractions, and if people used that time wasted to seek truth instead of pleasure, enjoyment, and positive feelings of comfort. Imagine if they instead faced the condition of the world we all share, all the waste and uselessness that we create, and all the resources to substantiate and perpetuate all these useless distractions, to instead face the negative in ourselves. Imagine disregarding the ease and comfort of distractions and recognizing how they aid us in avoiding those truths about our reality we don't want to face. We have an attraction to symbols of status and wealth through jewelry, fashion, material objects, not growing our own food, being wealthy enough to not need to do things ourselves, being wealthy enough to waste time on frivolous pursuits, and attraction to pleasure, enjoyment, comfort, and ease. This is the current pursuit of happiness. Whatever makes you happy is justified as being engaged in because it makes you happy. Forget about thinking it through and determining the causal links to what consequences arise as a result. It is a status symbol for wealth. The pursuit of happiness is constructed as a pursuit of wealth in various forms. It is caring more about enjoyment than learning what is right, good, and true. People do not have a desire to learn and better themselves. People do not want to figure out how bad things are and face the discomfort until they can understand how to change themselves, to change our reality as a reflection of ourselves, to manifest external conditions in the world that mirror each of us as we better, heal, improve, and change towards truth, love, good, right, morality, natural law, true self, higher will, etc. While we are busy with distractions and enjoying the comforts and ease that our game of exploitation affords us, other people in the world are not even capable of living off of basic needs, and other innocent sentient animate beings are used as property and products for our consumption. There is much suffering, but we don't care. We don't care about what is right, good, and true to truly help other beings and ourselves in our collective situation. Everyone is busy getting theirs and enjoying themselves at the expense of what it costs for them to get what they have. People want what is pleasing and do not want to face other unpleasantness in the world and how they are contributing to it. All of the distractions transfer and suck useful time and energy that could be used to look into information that is hidden or not as desirable as those distractions that provide us with the pleasure and gratification. The pleasure trap is focused on pleasure, gratification, amusement, enjoyment, ease, comfort, convenience, satisfaction, and distractions through our senses. This pleasure trap prevents us from developing ourselves in alignment and embodiment to truth, love, good, right, morality, natural law, true self, higher will, etc. Section 2. Obsession with feel-good senses. It doesn't matter that wrongs are still being done by us, that evil is being created by us. It doesn't matter that we are ignorant. We still don't want to learn. We still don't want to face the truth about our actions. Simply enjoy life, have fun, don't worry about evil in the world you are a part of. Simply ignore the truth and have fun and engage in whatever pleases you. We develop attachments to all of these distractions that provide us with these gratifications, enjoyments, and pleasures. The pursuit of truth is a science that requires abandonment of attachment to preconceived beliefs. We need to engage in the science of truth and make truth our religion to guide us in life on the correct path, in the right way of living. I listen to the radio to have some background music of classic rock throughout the day. And in between the music, it is often about self-pleasure and various forms of distraction. There are women traffic announcers that have to speak advertisements for Viagra. Impotence is related to diet. Many people have cured their diseased bodies by going to a healthy plant diet. The radio people talk about movies and music festivals for people to continue to immerse themselves in distractions. They talk about technology such as Google Glasses and virtual environments to provide with pleasure and distractions at a mentally stimulating level. Every time I hear this garbage, it frustrates me of how ignorant people are of real issues, real serious issues going on around them and inside of themselves. My own family members don't care about any of these things, these topics that I talk about. They are busy watching useless television about hockey games, football games, storage wars, auction hunters, gold digging, oil mining, and so many other useless things just to pass the time and distract the mind in order to not focus on anything of importance in life. One of the worst feel-good deceptions that has us justifying enslavement, exploitation, harm, and murder of other innocent, sentient, animate life is the aesthetic affinity for the illusory sense of taste. This is a trick in selecting foods that, and what we think is a valid criterion for determining what is right, good, and true for our benefit to eat. The pleasure trap of palatial taste tricks the body into accepting pleasurable, palatable foods it thinks are healthy. This is the basic method for how we have been accustomed to determine good foods like fruits and vegetables from poisonous ones that would do us bodily harm, and also how food smells, if it is rotten or not, etc. The tongue, nose, and mind think that if it tastes or smells delightful, then the body will benefit from it and take the least amount of effort to process. But this is not true. Just look at most of the food we have available. They taste good, they smell good, and they look good. They are attractive in an aesthetic sense on many levels of sensory deceptions, but they are not actually good. Our natural food production has created many deceptions. Comparative anatomy will show you the type of food we are designed to eat according to our biological and physiological nature. When you understand natural law to the core of your being, then you will understand the true foods we are supposed to eat from that unseen spiritual aspect of higher law and will. People are now addicted to feeling good in many ways. They will do many things just to feel good, just to achieve those sensations. They will seek things that make them feel good, even if they are not positive, good, or beneficial for them in the long term, apart from the short-term aesthetic sense illusion of various feelings they induce. Many people come up with excuses, such as convincing themselves that there is only one life to live. Do whatever makes you happy. Do whatever is enjoyable, right? What about health? Who cares? What about truth? Who cares? What about right and good? Who cares? If it feels good, tastes good, satiates desires, then do it. If it feels right, if it feels good, then it is right or good. So just go enjoy, be happy, and live your life based on those illusory, sensory illusions to determine the best course of action to take. It seems many of the ultimate justifications for engaging in behaviors and actions, for focusing attention and time on lower base consciousness, sense fulfillment like eating bad food, is because it tastes good. We are drawn to other feel-good actions, such as engaging in debaucherous sexual perversion, partying, drugs, and other escapism through attachment and dependence on what can be termed plant consciousnesses, and overuse of meditation, or engaging in other actions that are directly participating in overt harm, violence, and wrongdoings in order to support a sense gratification. To be clear, I am not against these healing modalities that I've previously mentioned, if you actually require them for healing, not if you constantly engage in them apart from the healing that you actually do need. Many people are already healed as much as they can from those things, but they do not let go and continue to blind themselves from facing their shadow through the real work of conscious awareness that is done by their own will and hard work, time, energy, effort, dedication, determination, and persistence. Here is something Mark Passio says that speaks similarly from podcast number 129 about using various tools available to us about using various tools available to help us find a way to heal ourselves. So here's the quote. You do not get healed immediately. It's about revisiting that realm, working in that realm, and confronting yourself when it has dropped you back down from the elevator. It's going to the top floor and it has dropped you back down to the ground floor, so now you know where the work is to do upon yourself. It doesn't take you up to the top floor and leave you up there. It takes you to the top floor of the elevator, opens the doors, shows you what's there to see what you have to work toward, closes the doors, and goes back to the first floor and kicks you out. Now do the work to get up there on your own. The last part is the most important to understand. If you need a glimpse to help you heal, okay. But then don't get attached to it. Don't be dependent on it. Do the hard work yourself. The real work needs to be done on the ground, not in the clouds, not in another realm, not in another state of being where you are immersed in feel-good sensations, where you are detached from action in the world. Use the tools if you need help to heal yourself. Then let go of them and do the hard work yourself by developing the courage and willpower to do it on your own. At some point, you have to face the mirror and recognize these things are not actually getting you to face reality honestly. Ask yourself, if all the meditation or other tools for healing and the alleged higher spiritual connection you believed you had was true, why have you been seeking to attain these inner feel-good states at the expense of facing your shadow and the truth about how you create wrongdoings and evil in the world? Your meditation or other obsession and dependence are a distraction that keep you in a feel-good state and prevented you from facing the truth. This is an imbalanced state. That is obvious to see in others when they are faced with the truth that many people do not want to face and investigate honestly. That of the animal enslavement, exploitation, violence, and murder issue. They prefer to keep lying to themselves and maintain the self-image and inner state of feeling good. Cognitive dissonance is strong in many who believe they are not affected by this psychological mechanism. Lying to ourselves is very powerful and much easier than lying to others. Section 3. Survival and ignoring truth, good, right. The principal satanic tenet is survival and self-preservation above all else, even at the expense of other beings. It doesn't matter what is going on outside of your immediate desire for your personal well-being or how you self-delude yourself into perceiving that as part of your alleged need for survival. You matter more than other beings, and all you care about is fulfilling your own desires to preserve whatever is important to you. This ranges from taking something from others to promote your own position in life, such as climbing the corporate or career ladder, to murder of an innocent, sentient, animate being to take what they have and get what you want and desire. It's all validation of wrongdoings and evil behavior in order to get what you want at the expense of others. All the while lying to yourself to continue believing in the self-image of yourself as a good person no matter what actions you take. Focusing on your body, on your survival, on your physical pleasure and well-being above that of other sentient animate beings when none of them are doing you any harm is embodying the satanic principal tenet of survival and self-preservation above all else. A New Ager I know doesn't care about the wrongs he does to other innocent sentient beings. He doesn't want to face his behavior in honesty, and has actually told me he is, quote, pure-hearted, with a serious face. When I told him he wasn't, he was sure surprised that someone would dare to tell that to his face. And he tells me he wants to teach me how to enjoy life. Because apparently to him, that is all that matters. Enjoyment, pleasure, etc. He has told me he lives by his feelings, emotions, heart, and not by thought. He is stuck in a divided internal state of conflict and opposition between the mind and heart, between the left and right brain modalities of expressing consciousness. You see how the heart, emotion, feeling doctrine of living can be delusional? Your sensations and feelings can be false and manipulated into having you believe you are not doing any harm, or justify the harm because it allows you to maintain a feel-good inner state and self-perceptual belief system. Choosing to live by mostly following feelings and to feeling good is a highly erroneous, deceptive method of living your life. All I see around me are people who don't care about anything other than their own lives or the lives of those close to them, with enjoyment, sense gratification, and getting what they want in life, no matter what beings are harmed in the process. This is seeking pleasure above that of seeking to know, understand, align, embody, and live in what is right, good, and true. What is not doing harm to innocent life because we can choose to live another way. This is ahimsa. That's A-H-I-M-S-A. The sacred feminine principle of non-violence, doing no harm. It is apophatic, a negative expression of what is right. Some people are generally good with respect to other humans only, while they completely ignore how they are doing harm to other innocent, sentient, animate beings that did them no harm and have the right to a free life. Only truth seekers will be able to traverse the narrow path, the narrow gate. Pleasure seekers will not have the endurance to go the distance. This path takes serious dedication, consistency, and zeal to embody and do aspects of what is good. We that choose this path are constantly surrounded by the forces of the animal mind, the carnal mind, the organic mind, the mind of flesh, those minds who seek pleasure, comfort, convenience, ease, enjoyment, gratifications, distractions, etc. They are relentless and ever present, but so are we. The journey to internal and external heaven is a worthy path to walk on, and it will not be found by choosing the wide gate of ease and convenience in life that makes us feel good all the time. Facing the shadow in full honesty and true self-respect is the beginning of this road to recovery for ourselves, all of humanity, and all of the sentient animate beings we live with. Here is an excerpt from a page by someone who understands right action and not doing harm to other innocent, sentient, animate beings that have their own lives and are not anyone's property. It's human nature to want to feel that what we're doing is right, proper, and logical. When we're confronted with something that suggests that our current practices are not the best ones, it's uncomfortable. We can either consider that our choices may not have been the best ones, which is extremely disturbing, or we can reject that premise without truly considering it so that we don't have to feel bad about our actions. That's the more comfortable approach. And when we do this by searching our minds for any arguments, we can for why the challenge must be wrong, to justify our current behavior. This practice is so common, psychologists have a name for it: cognitive dissonance. While we prefer to believe we act on reason, a formidable amount of psychological research shows the opposite. Often too usually, our actions aren't based on our arguments. Rather, our actions come first, and then we come up with the arguments to try to support those actions. If we were truly logical, we'd consider the evidence first and then decide the best course of action. But often we have it in reverse, because it's too difficult to accept that we might have been wrong. This is particularly true when it comes to vegetarianism. It's easy to identify because the anti-vegetarian arguments are usually so extreme compared to other kinds of discourse. A person who would never normally suggest something so fantastic as the idea that plants can think and feel pain will suddenly all but lunge for such an argument if they feel a need to justify their meat eating. That's psychology for you. I used to be in the same position as most readers probably are now. Long ago, my eating habits were challenged by a book I ran across in the library. I didn't want to consider it fairly because I wanted to keep eating meat. I'd grown up eating it, and I liked it. So I came up with various weak defenses to justify my behavior. But deep down, I knew I was kidding myself and practicing a form of intellectual cowardice. Eventually, I knew I had to consider the arguments honestly. And that's from Michael Bluejay. This is what people do regarding many issues of truth they do not want to accept because it goes against their current way of living and being. Their current behavior is not aligned with truth, love, good, right, morality, and they cannot face the wrongs they are a part of. They instead refuse to accept it and reject it in many defensive rationalizations to excuse their participation in evil wrongdoings that cause harm when they don't need to, if they would choose to align with what is good by taking that hard, arduous, narrow path of truth. They are avoiding the time, energy, effort, dedication, determination, and persistence required to do the great work. Section 4 is self-indulgence. People are often engaging in activities and living by the motto to enjoy life. That is all that matters to them. They do not like to seek truth, expand and evolve their consciousness, and understand what they are actually doing, what is actually creating the conditions we see manifested around us. That requires a lot of hard work, the great work, the inner work to know ourselves, our thoughts, emotions, and actions. It is very easy to decide to enjoy the ride and not fully understand how our behaviors manifest and where the motivation, root, causal factors for our behaviors come from. Enjoying life and not caring whether we are actually participating in harm against other beings is the trap to validate our current method of action and behavior in the world that creates our current condition. focusing on enjoying the ride and not caring much about greater truths of how we are participating in wrongdoings allows us to continue to self-delude ourselves into feeling good about ourselves and maintain a self-concept and self-image that we are good people, despite the reality and truth to the contrary that we choose to avoid, deny, ignore, and reject. This obsession of living to enjoy life for oneself is rooted in ego pleasure seeking at the expense of others who suffer as a result of our self-indulgent selfishness to maximize our enjoyment, ease, comfort, convenience, amusement, gratification, and feel-good so-called happiness about where we are at and how we live. There is a myopic view that what feels good is allegedly good, and therefore there are no reasons not to do it. This is an egoic, self-centered, pleasure-seeking worldview. Anything that feels good is acceptable and agreeable because it is equated with what is perceived and assumed to be good. What feels good and what actually is good are different things most of the time. We can easily conclude that we should just feel good all the time, and that is what will bring us the most joyous life and lead to peace and happiness for everyone. But this is not the case. Seeking pleasure and feeling good leads to avoidance of those things we do not want to face in ourselves and in the world. To an extreme, we could conclude that doing narcotics that bring us the most feel-goodness are what we should be doing all the time, but this is not the case. Our obsession and desire to feel good needs to be evaluated in light of what actually is good and what we should be aligning ourselves towards, which is harmonizing with truth, love, good, right, morality, natural law, true self, higher will, etc., and not basing hard choices, decisions, actions, and behaviors on preference for gratification in the 5 sense illusion. The negative ego pleasure trap leads to greed. If you have seen the movie The Hunger Games or the sequel Catching Fire, you will see that pleasure seeking leads to extreme selfishness, greed, and gluttony. In the movie, people in extreme wealth, in a delusional fantasy of selfish living, only caring about their own happiness and feel-good states of being, were involved in the gluttonous practice of gorging on food and vomiting it up again in order to continue to eat more food and repeat the process to satiate their mad desire for palatable pleasure sensational living. This has been an actual process in the past history of mankind, where people with extreme wealth and a self-serving attitude to exploit others at their own benefit were engaging in regurgitating food in order to continue eating because they were wealthy and could afford to buy a variety of taste sensation foods, and they were driven to please themselves to the most extreme that they could. Vomiting food you ate in order to continue tasting more food is insanity. Even in our own society, many people are living this way where their illusion of choice in engaging in wrongdoings does not matter because they place themselves and their own pleasure acquisition and attainment above the rights of other beings. All of this pleasure seeking and attainment can give us the illusion of actually feeling good about ourselves because we are in a feel-good state. If we really want to feel good, then we need to actually do aspects of what is good. And this can be done apophatically by disengaging and abdicating from doing harm in our lives. Actually doing good will put us in a true sense of knowing and recognizing that we are being an aspect of goodness in our lives. Simply feeling good about ourselves no matter what we actually do even if it is contrary to what is good and is actually doing wrong, is not healthy, responsible, intelligent, mature, or conducive to bringing freedom, peace, and truth into the world. It is a self-deception. Section 5. Aesthetics and reality manipulation. To create and get something to the point of beautification, to make something look nicer to the eyes, you first have to get it to its functional form. Clothes need to be made functional before a progression can be made towards the physical aspect as opposed to the purposeful functional aspect. What I mean to say is, clothes need to be made functional before a progression can be made towards the visual aspect as opposed to the purposeful functional aspect. A house must first be made functional before you make it look nice, at least in terms of practicality. A house to live in is much more valuable than a pretty house you can't live in. Function supersedes aesthetics. When the move from functionality to aesthetics is progressively being made to greater degrees of attachment towards the affinity of the visual stimulation, more and more energy is put into aesthetics and less towards function. This is blatantly obvious by looking at the ridiculously idiotic and absurd fashion shows and the garments that are not clothes and would not be worn by anyone, but are merely presented because of their visual excitement and tantalization in the industry. The appeal towards aesthetics enlarges the self-absorbed behavior in which we only focus on ourselves and what we desire. The desire for greater aesthetic pleasure is based on the five-sense illusion of sight, in which we are being ruled by our vision into diverging time and energy into greater variations of visual preferences. This self-absorption for a more appealing and desirable visual representation can override our care and desire for investing our time and energy into ameliorating and improving our overall life condition and the overall life condition of other people and other beings around us and on the planet that we share. It overrides the care for practicality and functionality to create and live in true freedom and peace, instead preferring the visual or other appeals that deceive us into believing it is freedom and peace. This is also applicable in other aspects of life, such as desires for material objects that are not necessary, that only satiate a desire to have what other people have. One feels that, given the way the system operates and they have an exorbitant amount of money compared to other people, why shouldn't they own mansions? Why shouldn't they own large plots of land, a yacht, boat, motor vehicles of various kinds, and have many vacations to escape the dread and misery of a regular life? Why shouldn't they spend money to buy those things, buy gasoline, and spend time driving around in leisure and comfort? They see other people doing it and they think to themselves they can do it too. Why not? They want to be allegedly happy like them, in a constant feel-good inner state of delusion. They want to be comfortable like them. They want to show off like them. If only I had that kind of life, they think. If they have the money as well, why not live luxurious and comfortable lives with entertainment and tantalizing material that gives you so-called happiness from using it? Happiness sought after through material interaction is not true happiness that is arrived from within. The whole argument that we should pursue happiness is fallacious because it fails to distinguish between immediate satisfactions that are fleeting and fade away and do not provide any modicum of true meaning in our lives versus the true happiness that is attained through the inner work within ourselves that gives us real meaning, purpose, and self-value. As such, aesthetics is valuable in that it provides visually appealing things. such as beautiful scenery, nature, and other beauty for the eye to perceive. The difference is in appreciating beauty and manufacturing it to make the visual spectrum more appealing. Aesthetics loses its worth when, instead of appreciating those things that are beautiful, time and energy is vested into creating aesthetically pleasing material for the sole purpose of making it visually appealing and pleasing. When our surroundings can be made to look appealing while the underlying foundational functionality of how we live is not appealing, then we are infatuated with it, being fooled, manipulated, and deceived by our eyes, by our affinity with aesthetics. We live most of our lives through eyesight, over the other four senses. What we see has a great impact on our conceptions and worldview. The overemphasis on aesthetics at the detriment of proper, accurate, correct, right, good, true functionality of our lives and the lives of other beings is something that needs to be contemplated by everyone. If people would care more about how things really are in reality as opposed to how they appear, then many of the issues and problems we face in our daily lives would no longer be there because we would change them. People are easily fooled by the five-sense illusion of perception because they can be made to see something not as it is. When you do not have an accurate representation of what something is, then you accept or construct conceptions and worldviews that are based on a lie. These constructs are how we live our lives, in what we think, feel, say, and do. Having a false conception and basing your choices and decisions on a false conception will lead you down a false path. Your foundational constructs upon which you understand things is flawed. Therefore, everything you build upon that foundational construct will also be flawed. From the flawed foundational construct or belief follows erroneous thoughts, feelings, actions, and behavior. If we do not understand things as they truly are, then we are living in an illusion. This is the world we currently live in. Some things we see as they really are, while other things we do not see for what they really are, and instead buy into the false representations or distracting diversions in order to inhibit true perception of what really matters. Real eyes realize real lies. When you can't face the truth as it is, that you are a part of evil and wrongdoings, then you don't really have those real eyes developed. You only have a partial development. Our attachment to illusory perceptual mechanisms leads us into false paths because they do not accurately represent what is truly right, good, and true. We are misled by our affinity for visual aesthetics. Similar to visual aesthetics regarding visual beauty, the other senses can also be viewed in grades or degrees of perspective properties. For hearing, it would be sounds that sound good versus sounds that do not sound as good. In taste, we have things that taste better than other things, but this is not the measure for whether that thing is better for us. Soft tones can speak lies that are pleasing, while harsh tones that speak hard, uncomfortable truths can be perceived as bad. The senses are tools, but they must be used with discernment, with judgment. Blindly following aesthetic affinity that various materials, activities, or events provides us with often leads to doing the wrong thing. Our affinity for optical aesthetics, auditory aesthetics, tactile aesthetics, olfactory aesthetics, and palatial aesthetics can lead us along the wrong path because we are foolishly using these tools as the sole means of guidance in our choices and decision making. We must look beyond the sensory illusions and look at the overall picture of everything that encompasses a decision and choice that we act upon. Truth is paramount before anything else. Truth reigns supreme. Thinking love comes first while remaining ignorant and immersed in a web of lies. Thinking love comes first because it brings you this false happiness of ignorance is absurd. Just like aesthetics, if you construct your meaning and value system based on lies that make you feel good, then this is not truly love, nor is it happiness. It is self-deception in order to maintain a momentary acquisition or semblance of a facsimile to that which you truly seek. It is a proxy, a false representation. You're seeking love, you're seeking happiness, but you are doing it within the framework of lies, deception, manipulation, and false perception. Truth is where it all starts. The sixth and last section is a few quotes. There's only a little bit to read. I will end this with a few quotes from a biblical derived site that I do not agree with 100%, but has something important to say about how this feel-good sensory gratification, obsession, deception prevents us from walking the narrow path, entering the narrow gate, doing the hard work, the great work, picking up our own crosses, and walking in the way of truth, love, good, right, morality, natural law, etc. If you are anti-Bible and think I am some gospel bimbo, all I can say is, piss off, you idiot. Truth is contained in many places. Get over your ignorance. So the first quote: men of an organic mindset demand instant gratification with the immediate fulfillment of their carnal appetites. They simply do not possess the moral or spiritual stamina to do as Jesus commanded and fulfill the mandate to pick up their own crosses and travail in the way. The second quote: thus, Paul stated to the baptized believers that he himself had instructed, this is a quote from the Bible, and I, brethren, could not speak to you as to spiritual people, but as to carnal, as to babes in Christ. I fed you with milk and not with solid food, for until now you were not able to receive it, and even now you are still not able, for you are still carnal. That's from 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 1-3 from the New King James Bible. And milk and solid food, it's not about milk, it's a parable. It's a parable about levels of understanding. I'll continue with the quote after the Bible quote, which is still part of the quote from that site. And that the Christian who was to overcome the limitations of their carnal mindset and nature, enabling them to expand and evolve the mind, and the transformation of their physical being into a state of spiritual maturity with the objective of the gospel message and demonstrated in the commandment of Paul, put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the sinful nature with its passions and desires. And I will read one quote from Gandhi that relates to the above bodily, carnal versus spiritual desires and its relation to ahimsa, doing the least harm that we can to live. Let us now examine the root of ahimsa. It is uttermost selflessness. Selflessness means complete freedom from a regard for one's body. When some sage observed man killing numberless creatures, big and small, out of a regard for his own body, he was shocked at his ignorance. He pitied him for thus forgetting the deathless soul encased within the perishable body, and for thinking of the ephemeral physical pleasure in preference to the eternal bliss of the spirit. He then deduced the duty of complete self-effacement. He saw that if man desired to realize himself, i.e. truth, he could do so only by being completely detached from the body, i.e. that is to say, by making all other beings feel safe from him. That is the way of ahimsa. And that's from Young India, April 11th, 1926, pages 384 to 85. If you understand the above in relation to the two other quotes, you will see how this relates to the satanic principal tenet of survival and self-preservation above all concerns for other beings. It's not about neglecting the body or fleshly world, but about not being focused on your survival at the expense of others because you deem it valid and justifiable to engage in harm and evil because you believe it is necessary or because you want the pleasure that comes with it. We need to let go of our attachment to the calcified ego and immersion in darkness of doing harm when we can choose to do otherwise, to live and thrive by other means that do not require us to do so. Evolve care, compassion, empathy, conscience, morality, and consciousness. Peace. That's the end of the article, and I put related material as usual. The first one is, as usual, the Truth is Love article. Huge article, lots of important stuff, explains a lot. The next one is the Natural Law Trivium and Levels of Consciousness chart. It has a lot of this well, not the pleasure trap thing, but it has a lot of understanding of natural law and how to align with it and how to create the reality we want. Next one is the synopsis of 25 New Age Deceptions chart, which I take Mark Passio's 10 and I add 15 of my own, and I briefly describe all of them and how they're all deceptions and how they're all deceptions and they're bullshit. And the feel-good one is in there. I think it's number 11. It's the first one that I added because it's the biggest one we have to deal with, is this bullshit feel-good crap. It's such a manipulation. And then I finally put my latest graphic, Truth, Natural Law, Heaven and Hell, Bible Symbolism, since I read two little parts from a Bible-related site about the pleasure trap. And that graphic is about the alchemical process and climbing the ladder from the carnal bodily, flesh, hell, perdition state, and we climb up through birth, through rebirth, resurrection, and enter the narrow gate, the narrow path, the arduous, hard effort, dedication, determination, and persistence of seeking truth, aligning with it, and embodying it to live it in our lives, and walking the path, and walking the way, walking truth, living it. Not just talking the talk, but walking it. So, I don't really have much else to add. That's the end of the Pleasure Trap article. I hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, have a good one.